Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class this morning. Thank you for joining me, whether you're watching here with me live or you're watching the recording today. I think the first thing that I need to do today is just come through with all of my apologies. right? I haven't necessarily had the best of luck over the last week or so. You know, just some things going wrong here and there, Murphy's Law and whatnot. Right? So I come into the office this morning. I rebooted my machine before I left yesterday. And, you know, this machine's got a little age on it. And sometimes it needs to be coaxed into starting up and working. And this morning was one of those mornings where it needed a little extra assistance getting up and running, which explains the delay getting started there today. Right? I was having to do some hard drive tests, try to get things booted up. Was not going well. I was basically running around like the proverbial chicken with a head cut off from the time that I first sent that first email. Get you off of there. Still a few quirks here and there, I guess. From the time that I sent that first email at around 8:20 to around 9:05 when I sent the second one, I was just kind of running around kind of frantic trying to get this thing working. So my apologies for that. And also, I need to apologize for the due date issue last week. I just kind of, you know, when you got 6 different courses that you're teaching in a semester, sometimes these due dates run together. But like I said in the announcement that I put out last week, if you just go by the syllabus, I'm not going, you know, or the pacing guide that's in the Begin Here module, I'm of course not going to penalize you. It's just me being, you know, human and silly. And, you know, when that happens from time to time, you know, I'll normally check that pacing guide before I send out announcements, but I just kind of forgot last Thursday trying to get some stuff done. But yeah, so I guess that gives us what we need to get us started for the day. You know, just apologies all around there. And I thank you all for your understanding and your willingness to work with me with all this stuff. It's going to get better. Always try to get better. So today we're talking about social media best practices, and these are kind of the things that I think a lot of people are interested in. They're interesting to me, right? They are definitely interesting to me, and hopefully they are to you. These are the kind of things that, you know, we're looking at when we're talking about, like, oh, well, what's the best way that I should post a blog post, or when should I post on Facebook, right? For the chance of the highest return on investment. You know, these are those things that, you know, people are interested in, that, you know, we actually have data on that shows that there's an impact. And so as you're approaching, like, using some of these social platforms, this is a good thing for you all to know, right? So that's what I'd kind of like to talk about today. I've just got some best practices here, talking about some blogging best practices, talk about some Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all these best practices for using all of these platforms. And then at the end, we just got some general, universal advice for using these platforms. Right, and so that's kind of what we have to cover for today. But for the first thing I'd like to talk about here is blogging. Right, and I thought I'd kind of preface the idea of blogging with a few more stats here, right? And the importance of blogging and writing a good blog. Because I was reading an article yesterday that was titled, "Is Blogging Dead?" And essentially what we have there is the conceit of a clickbait title, right? Trying to get us to think about something. And I want you to kind of keep that title there in your mind, because we're going to talk about some things in just a few minutes that's going to, you know, kind of show you why that title went viral. Because the title of the blog post was, "Is Blogging Dead?" Now, the fact that it was a blog post on its own kind of lends you to what the author of said post believed about blogging, right? The consensus at the end of the article was no, blogging is not dead. And, to kind of support this, we went out and found some statistics there to kind of support it, because these are all recent statistics. And for most of the stuff that you'll see today, I'll have the source of the statistic or the source of the best practice out there beside it in parentheses. So the things that you see in parentheses here, they're the source of these items. Some of the things are a little different in terms of their sources, and so we'll talk about the sources of those when we get to them. So is blogging dead? Obviously no here based on these statistics, right? Out of the 1.9 billion websites in the world, 600 million are blogs. So that's about a quarter, just a little over a quarter, maybe closer to closer to 30% of all the websites in the world are blogs. Now, something to think about with that is that, if you're getting into blogging, you're going to have competition, right? Like there's going to be a lot of competition because most of the, a plurality of the websites in the world are blogs, right? 30% roughly of all the world's websites. Which is to say that, blogging is a very popular medium. There are a lot of people doing it. And yet still, even with all these people doing it, there's still a lot of space for people to come in with their own blogs, right? There are still new blogs that pop up in 2022, regardless of how many that exist, that, that still get traction and still get people reading them. So that's an interesting thing to think about. The number of bloggers in the U.S. here, the second bullet point, is estimated at 31.7 million. And that was as of 2020, right? We're trying to... Usually the data for this kind of stuff is a year or two back. So that's probably the most recent data that we have on the estimate of the number of bloggers. But really that number is only rising, right? The more blogs exist, the more bloggers enter the space, the more people wanting to write and share the things that they know about, the more that we're going to end up with, right? So again, this goes to show you just what kind of competition you're up against. And to put this in perspective, right? Because I just had this thought, and this thought just hit me. So I was like, I wonder what that looks like in relation to the total population of the United States. That just hit me. So I just had a quick Google of current U.S. population, and that's 329.5 million. So that's looking at roughly 10% of the people in the United States. And that population data there, the total population for the United States is also as of 2020. So in 2020, roughly 10% of the U.S. population blogged in some sort of way. So there's a ton of blogs, right? Ton of blogs in the world, tons of people writing on blogs, even in the United States. There's a lot of competition. So making sure that we're doing things in the proper way for best practices makes a whole lot of sense. But I think the last line here still kind of brings us back around to the idea of why blogging is still good, even though we have all these blogs and all these people blogging. 77% of internet users read blogs. 77% of internet users read blogs. Which, that's significant, right? That's a huge number of people, right? And that's total internet users. So even though there is a lot of competition in the market, in the blogosphere, if you will, there's a lot of readers out there to get a hold of and to have reading your content. And so one of the first questions that I get is, well, how can I make my blog stand out among all these other blogs, among these other 600 million blogs in the world? How can I make my writing stand out against the other, 331.7 million bloggers in the United States? And that's through the best practices, right? And then the next question that I typically get asked about that is, well, how long should my blog be, right? Like, that's the age-old question. Everybody wants to know whether they're writing a paper for school or whether they're, doing whatever. They want to know, how long should it be? And the answer here might surprise you just a little bit, because there is a moderate positive correlation between content length and organic traffic, up to a point. Right? So essentially, there's a moderately positive, a slightly positive correlation between shorter content, or actually, it's correlated between a little longer content and organic traffic, up to the point of 2,000 words. So between 0 and 2,000 words, you see a slightly trending upward line in terms of traffic garnered by these blog posts. The longer your blog is, up to 2,000 words. Now, if we were to kind of take that out and put it into like paper length, right? Like college essay length, that's a super long post, right? Like, I think typically if we were looking at like a double spaced page, I think that typically falls around 500 words for a printed 8.5 by 11 double spaced page. So a 2,000 word blog post is like a 4-page college essay, which is long, right? Like, we don't really put that in perspective very often, but it's long. I know, if you've completed one of your lab assignments for the current module 2, then you kind of get this idea of just how long 750 words is, right? So we actually have a lot of flexibility in terms of how much we can write. And if you are one of the more verbose individuals out there, like I know I am, right? Like, when I get into writing something, or even, you could probably tell by these live streams that I do. And I don't know that I necessarily like to hear the sound of my own voice, but it doesn't, I gotta talk about something for these classes, right? So I can put a lot of words out there. And so if you're the type of person who can put a lot of words out there, that's going to be to your benefit up to that 2,000 word point. Somehow, arbitrarily, like, the world has kind of decided that 2,000 words is the watermark. That's kind of where we're going to be. And because at that 2,000 word mark, we start to see things go down. We start to see that traffic, we start to see that interest go down. But in addition to this long form content being more positively correlated, we also see more links to longer term or longer form content, right? And when we're talking about links here, we're talking about shares. We're talking about people sharing content. And so this long form content up to 2,000 words, right, gets an average of 77.2 more links than short articles. So something that is a little bit longer, that's a little bit closer to 2,000 words, is going to be much more likely to be shared by other content providers than a short article. And, we were talking about aggregate blogs last week as being one of the forms of blog, right? So in terms of aggregate, being shared, being aggregated onto other places. You want to trend toward longer blog posts. And a question that might come up is, just why exactly is this? And it could it could be a little psychological, right? It could just be kind of how the words are kind of displayed on the page in terms of, the length of what looks overwhelming versus what doesn't look overwhelming, right? We don't really have the ability, and we haven't really tested, although this might be a good research project for someone to kind of gauge the impression of blog posts based on length. Because all we're looking at here with this data is traffic correlation. And so to some degree, when you're looking at traffic correlation, you could say, well, that's potentially because of search engine optimization. If I have something that's slightly longer, then I can put more keywords in there, so my blog becomes more searchable. So people who are looking for information about my topic will be more likely to find my blog, right? Because I have more keywords in there that Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever can pick up on and allow me to be recommended more highly in their search results. Right? Because if you're the number 2 blog on search results for a particular topic versus being on the second or third page, you're going to get more traffic and you're going to get more clicks. And the most common complaints that we see are ones that the content is too wordy. Right? So, even if you have a longer blog, if you kind of lose focus and sort of ramble a little bit, that's something that people can easily pick up on. That it's poorly written, right? So you want to kind of be on your A game with your writing skills here, or that it's poorly designed. Just the blog itself being poorly designed, and that's one of the reasons why we would, in general, want to err towards one of those platforms that we talked about last week, because the design there is kind of taken out of your hands. You have like a set of templates that you can use, or you have, a certain set of things that you can work with. But the page layout and all the big important stuff in terms of design was already handled by the platform creator. So, using things like WordPress.com, Medium, Blogger, all the other stuff that we talked about last week is going to be to your benefit there, right? Because the design is going to be primarily handled by whoever built that platform, with you being able to come in and make a handful of customization. But I told you to put a pin in that headline we talked about earlier, right? The headline of that blog post that said, "Is blogging dead?" Is blogging dead? Question mark at the end of that. Keep that in mind, because the next thing that we want to talk about when we talk about creating a blog, right? A blog is essentially 2 parts. It's the text, which we're looking at here, and it's the title or the headline. And so we see 2 things here. One is that very long headlines, which, just kind of like our long blog post, we're talking about 14 to 17 words here, actually outperform short headlines by 76.7% in terms of social sharing. So you get more backlinks, you get more shares with a longer headline, which, is blogging dead? That's a very short headline. That's also a very provocative headline, right? Headlines with a question mark get 23.3% more social shares than non-question headlines. Right? The idea there is that it's supposed to be thought-provoking. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to make you want an answer to that question. Right? So when you get posed with the question, "Is blogging dead?" You're like, well, is it? I want to know. You're kind of pulled in just by the headline there. And, a lot of this stuff you see people doing, right? Like, you don't really notice it at first, but now that you've heard about it as a best practice, you're going to see it all over the internet whenever you're going around to and looking at different sites and articles and blog posts and stuff. You're going to see a lot of very long headlines. And you don't even think about it. Because one of the biggest, most popular categories in blogging is to create a top whatever list, or a whatever best list, or a whatever worst list. I say whatever there because of another little tip that people give for creating blog post headlines. And that's to not use top 10, that's to use some other number, like top 12, top 8, top 9, top 13, top 7, whatever. Right? Because we were oversaturated with top 10. Right? Top 10's everywhere, so top some other number is, going to catch attention better. Just because it looks different, right? It's something that we'll talk about in a few minutes when we talk about YouTube, but one of the things that became really prevalent in YouTube was just the idea of differences and how much differences made an impact. Just making something different draws someone's attention to it just a little bit more. So since we were kind of oversaturated with top 10s, right? ESPN's top 10 plays, David Letterman's top 10 list, everybody was putting out a top 10 list. To put out a top 7 list or to put out a top 13 list, is like a trying to come up with a good analogy here. Like you had a pit of yellow balls and then you throw one blue ball in there. I don't know. It's just tough analogy, right? It's just going to stand out a little bit more. And with these top, however many list headlines, these are super long headlines, right? Like top 10, not top 10, top 13 greatest U.S. presidents of all time or whatever, right? Like, because you're adding the top 10 or, top whatever number prefix there, that adds a couple words to it. You got to establish your baseline in there. What are you going to be talking about? So that adds words to it. So really, like according to these headline rules here, if we have a longer headline, roughly 14 words or so, and it's a question, we could even take that top whatever list and kind of reframe it into a question and say, what are the greatest black and white films of all time? Right, that's provocative. That's also evocative, right? It's going to conjure up memories in people's heads as to, what they think that is. And big number 3 there, you provide a little top 4, 5, 6, however many in that article. Maybe their favorite wasn't on the list. And just like that, you've encouraged interaction. And when we talk about the funnel a little later on in the course, this will be something that we talk about in terms of getting that social engagement, going from awareness to active community member. Right? So if you can encourage interaction and encourage engagement, even through some slightly shadier means, right? Like if there's one thing that's generally accepted that people really like this one thing and you leave it off your list, then everybody in the comments are going to be like, where's so-and-so? I expected that to be on the list and it's not there. Why isn't it there? right? It's just one of those engagement things. So we can really bring about a lot of engagement, a lot of interaction, a lot of linking back and forth, sharing by looking at these best practices for blogging and engaging them as we write our blogs. The next thing I have here is directly with Facebook, and these items in particular on this screen come directly from Facebook. And so with Facebook, consistency is key, right? Don't be afraid to post daily, they say. Because one of the interesting things that kind of comes up with this consistency is that your audience develops expectations. And so Facebook provides you one level of consistency. YouTube provides you a whole different level of consistency. We'll talk about that when we get there. But your audience develops expectations based on how consistent you are. If you're posting daily and you're posting, relevant content daily, they're going to keep coming back to get that new content. Because they're going to be expecting that new content to show up. They're going to be expecting you to, it's kind of like food, right? Kind of like food. The old experiments with the lab animals, right? Like you give them a little treat and ring the bell, and then they come back when you ring the bell and expecting to get another treat. Right? And, when we really kind of go down the rabbit hole of a lot of the best practices of different social media platforms and things of that nature, we really it could be abused, because there's some really kind of shady business going on here, and that is something that we'll talk about when we get a little bit later on in the course and we talk a little bit more about ethics and stuff like that. The idea that some of these things can be pushed to a point where we're kind of crossing that line from best practices to get our post seen to stuff we can do to manipulate people, which is another conversation for another day. But we want to be conversational and authentic, right? When we're talking about authenticity here, we're not, we're still talking about within the realms of what we're sharing, within the realms of what our content is, right? And being conversational. A lot of people are on social media and because they want to, connect with friends, connect with relatives, right? And so if you're positioning your content as friendly content, as conversational content, the type of, if you're positioning it as, the type of thing that, you might be talking to somebody in your living room about, right? If I'm going to talk about this subject to one of my friends, this is how I would talk about it to them, right? You're creating that social capital there between the individual who is coming to your platforms and you as the content creator. So being conversational, kind of like you're just talking to somebody in your living room, being real, being authentic with it is significant. You want to post a variety of content to maximize your reach on Facebook. This is text posts, this is videos, this is photographs, pictures, right? Because with Facebook, you're attracting a wide audience, right? You're casting a wide net because you have options for all of these different multimedia items to be placed on Facebook. And some people are more drawn to videos, and some people are more drawn to pictures, and some people would just rather read, like the blog post type stuff. And so when we're working with our Facebook, we're really working with a variety of stuff, right? To kind of draw in people from these different categories who might be interested in what we have to say, but they are keen to videos on Facebook. They like to look at pictures on Facebook. They like to read stuff on Facebook. We can kind of get them from different places there. video is being prioritized on Facebook, right? More video is being watched on Facebook than ever before. And I think they've changed the monetization of video on Facebook. I think that's different now than it used to be. I don't know as much about how they monetize it because, you know, they kind of like to keep that to some degree secret. But it used to be that if you watched 3 seconds of a Facebook video, that counted for that video as a view. Might still be that way because it wasn't that long ago that it was that way. But that counted for that video as a view, which, like, it takes us 3 seconds just kind of scrolling through. When something catches our eye, it takes us longer than 3 seconds to decide whether or not we want to just skip that and go on to the next thing. Right, so utilizing video on Facebook can be to your benefit, right? It can draw in this group of people that are, you know, very video, very multimedia focused, and it, you know, it can be something that you can monetize to make a little money off of if you were to get, you know, kind of ad partnered on Facebook, right? Very that's a little tougher than it is on YouTube, but it is possible. Now, one of the tricks here, though, is that when we talk about this, we're talking about new and original content, right? So if you are posting YouTube videos, you also want video content for Facebook. And this is a good place for, like, behind the scenes type stuff, right? Or, you know, maybe like a little promotional video. This is something that I've seen a lot of creators starting to do now, is creating a little promotional video and putting it on Facebook for their Facebook audience to try to drive people over toward YouTube. You know, just a quick, like, 30-second, like, hey everybody, I just put out this new video on YouTube. If you've ever wondered why such and such and such and such, go check that out and see what it's all about. You know, that sort of thing. And then you're linking there and you're getting that synergy between different platforms, which is one of our goals. Now, for a lot of these platforms, right, like Facebook included, posting times become significant, right? When you post becomes significant. And the best time to post on Facebook we have here is from 1 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. And this does kind of vary based on day of the week and based on target audience. So when we're looking at these posting times, we'll look at posting times for Instagram, we'll look at posting times for Twitter. Your mileage may vary on these, right? Based on who your audience is and how they're interacting with Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Right? But in general, just for some generalized stuff, the best time to post on Facebook is from 1 o'clock p.m. to 4 o'clock p.m. And there is what we'd call a posting dead zone when you would want to avoid posting between midnight and 8 a.m. Basically, you know, with the good posting times there from 1 to 4 and worked with, your post can get categorized and worked with, and it can, you know, be ready for people to see when they get out of school, when they get off work, while they're waiting in the car rider line to pick up their kids from school, you know, that sort of thing. So when we're looking at that 1 to 4 p.m. time zone there, you know, that's typically what we're looking at there. And then the dead zone for basically everything is pretty much overnight. Let's talk Instagram. So like Facebook, we kind of want to be able to share some exclusive content there that, you know, your fans, your followers can't see anywhere else. Behind the scenes photos, behind the scenes videos, quick little chats. One of the things that's very common is, you know, I'll see people like, hey, you know, I'm going to do an Instagram Q&A. So you can ask me questions through Instagram and then I'll answer them in a post or in a story or something like that. You want to post frequently on Instagram, right? Instagram's typically a little more per day than Facebook, right? In general, our rule of thumb for Facebook is about 1 post a day. For Instagram, it's going to be 2 to 3. But we also don't want to, what we call, bleed the feed, which essentially just means overposting, right? If somebody sees a lot of posts from you on their timeline without seeing other content, that's probably going to burn them out, and that's might make them unfollow. Now, Instagram's kind of fixed this for us, kind of fixed the concept of, bleeding the feed for us by their curated timelines. So they don't necessarily show everything that's been posted over a span of time. They just kind of show this curation of what they think that user would like to see at that particular time. So Instagram kind of helps us a little bit, but we do want to kind of keep our posting to a bare minimum, 2 to 3 posts on Instagram per day to get that frequent content, but also, keep it simple and not overwhelm anyone. Using filters and boomerangs, stickers, and the drawing tools, that's a big thing to kind of make it fun and amp it up and work with it that way. Right, especially the interactive stickers that you can put on stories and such. Those are huge things on Instagram to get interaction, to get engagement. So these are things that you would want to do. Just because it makes it stand out. It's a little bit different. It's not the same as just every other mundane photo that you'd see on there, right? It's got a little filter on it. It's got a little, it's got a little motion to it. They drew on it. They did something with it, right? So these are significant, and they help you stand out. We have Instagram posting times here as well. And that should be the best time to post on Instagram is from 5 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. Copy and paste it. Forgot to change it. But 5 o'clock p.m. to 6 o'clock p.m. So we noticed that the time zone's a little bit different there. The best span of time is a little bit different there for Instagram. But the dead zone is exactly the same from midnight to 8 a.m., basically overnight. Which is pretty interesting in terms of how all that works. Right, these are just kind of the best times to post again. Something to think about. Your mileage may vary. So what I might recommend people do is, since it is kind of dependent on audience, for the first couple weeks, kind of test it out. Right, look at the engagement for certain things and see, how many likes did you get when you posted it at 3 versus how many likes you got when you posted it at 5 or whatever. And so when you work in this more and more, and you can kind of experiment and post it a few different times and see, what works the best, then you can start to settle into a routine there, which is pretty critical. Let's talk about Twitter quickly here. One of the first things is that you only want to retweet content that's relevant to your audience, right? On Twitter in general, right, for like personal accounts, you're just going to retweet and like what interests you. But if you're tweeting with a purpose, right, if you're tweeting to support something else, some other type of content, for that particular Twitter, you only want to retweet content that's related to the stuff that you talk about. Right? If it's different content than what you normally talk about, that's kind of breaking that expectation, which is something that we really don't want to do. Right? Expectations from audience is super important. And they're going to expect to come see you talk about a certain thing. And if you're retweeting things that are irrelevant to the thing that they're expecting from you, that's going to turn people off. Keeping it short on Twitter seems to work, right? Like, we talked before about how, Twitter's microblogging, it's basically forcing you to microblog because you're limited to that 280 character limit. But better tweets, tweets that perform better, are between 71 and 100 characters. So they're even shorter, right? They're even shorter than the old limit, right, of 140 characters when Facebook or Twitter first started there. They're even shorter than that. So that's something to consider. And I believe that has to do with, one of the things that we talked about Twitter last week was we talked about how fast Twitter moves. And I think if you're on a quickly moving platform like that, one of the big things there is that you want to, you want to keep it brief, keep it short, so you can, kind of get that out there. People can read it really quickly and move on to the next thing just because the platform does move so fast. And then finally, using hashtags for engagement in conversations. Because, when you use a hashtag, it basically makes it part of a broader environment that uses those hashtags as well. So other people who might not follow you but might be interested in the things that are on that hashtag are able to find you, basically. So there are actually websites that allow you to find top hashtags for the platforms. Like one of the things, like I'll show you one here. It's called Keyword Tool. Right, and so I can type in a keyword and I can get back hashtags that are popular for that particular thing, right? So like if I were to type in small business and hit enter there, we can see some keywords here that we can work with, some hashtags here. It wants to charge us for different stuff here. We don't have to do that though. We see small business ideas, small business thread, small business deposit, small business jewelry. These are things that are kind of trending and popular on Twitter. So we can, hashtag small business ideas. People are going to be looking for those. And we also see that, these keywords here are the same for YouTube. We have keywords there for YouTube. I'm going to show you a different site for that in just a little bit. To kind of get those out. In fact, let me go ahead and pull that up so I have that. Some ideas for hashtags or for tags and such. Tags, hashtags, so on and so forth. For Twitter, our posting times are very similar. From 1 to 3 in the afternoon, great times for posting tweets. 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So an even longer and even wider swath of time there are considered to be our Twitter's dead zone times. So that's something to think about as well. Let's talk YouTube. The biggest thing with YouTube is consistency. And when we're talking about consistency, we're talking about consistency in an even bigger sense than Facebook. Right? Because people on YouTube are looking for a certain thing. And that certain thing is the specific thing that they've known you for providing them. Right? Like I've heard a lot of stories over time about how channels will start with a certain type of content, pivot to a different type of content, and then just fall off the face of the earth. Because the things that their audience was expecting from them was gone. right? So that's something to think about on which is why I kind of have you all pick a topic on YouTube, right? So in that broader sense of a topic instead of just posting random videos every week. Because people are going to be looking for videos on that topic when you've established the expectation that this is what this channel is about. And they're going to establish expectations that you're going to post the same type of content on the same days, even at the same times. Right? And again, this is something that, your mileage is going to vary on. You might want to, as you're getting started, test putting videos up at different times on different days just to see if one gets more engagement than another. And then kind of settling into a time that seems to work best for your particular audience. Another thing we have here is to lean into the analytics. And let me just pull up my analytics page just so you can see what the analytics here looks like. You have access to an analytics page for you. Let me try to grab some analytics here quickly. The analytics. So here in my analytics, we see that, this is for the last 28 days, right? And we can see the types of content that is doing well on my channel. I can go ahead and full screen this here for us. See the types of content that's doing well on my channel. I can switch it here from the last 28 days to the last 365 days to the lifetime of the channel, whatever I want it to be, right? We got a lot of metrics here for us to be able to use. I'm going to switch it over to the lifetime of the channel. And we can see how much this channel has gotten. 3.3 thousand views, 417 watch hours, 36 subscribers. And we can see my most viewed video. Here's actually some of my design videos where I talk about the Design of Everyday Things book and just kind of break down the different chapters there. I'm assuming that's other college kids who are, in design school looking for my my summaries there. And then Java. So according to the content that I post on my channel, and I really don't even, I try not to advertise the content on this channel, right? I don't tag the content on this channel. You look at the titles, I don't really make the titles searchable, right? Because I'm trying really not to put this content out there since it's class stuff. But even still, right? Like I can kind of see here that I've got content, my content on Java and my content on design are the things that are kind of the most popular on the channel. And we can see, we can see reach here. We can kind of see some traffic sources. See a lot of people find my videos through YouTube search. We can see an idea of the funnel here. And again, we'll talk more about the funnel in a future module. Basically, getting that person from awareness to engagement to being a part of a community. Right? We can see, all the sort of stuff. CTI 140 playlist gets a lot of play here, which is the virtualization class I did one time. But the design stuff really gets some engagement. You can see engagement here. This is primarily going to be watch hours. We can see watch time here. So over the lifetime of my channel, people have watched this 130. This video here is about 3 minutes long, and they've watched 30 hours of it. So awesome, right? And so when we're looking at this content, we can see which types of content are doing better on our channel. We can see which types of content that's getting the most engagement, and we can use this as kind of a foundation to jump off from here and create more content that's kind of specialized in that area for that. We can also see audience demographics here, who's subscribed versus who's not subscribed, right? Like that's one of the things that people on YouTube are kind of getting in. That's one of the big things now, right? Is they'll say, "Oh, did you know that 75% of the people who watch videos on my channel are not subscribed? You can subscribe today; it's free, and you can always unsubscribe later." That's the sort of thing that everybody says because they're leaning into the analytics and they're seeing what works, and they're seeing, to a certain degree, it's kind of like guilting your audience, right? Like, hey, you're watching this and you're not subscribed. What gives? Sort of thing. And for a lot of this other stuff, like we see the age and gender here, that does not necessarily mean that 100% of people that watched every one of my videos is between the ages of 45 to 54 and male, right? That just means that these are people who have those things filled out on their account. So that's one of the things where we can kind of take take this with a pinch of salt, right? In terms of age and gender and all those other demographic information. Because in order for you to be able to get that information, they have to have that in their Gmail account or their YouTube account. And a lot of people just simply don't, right? But it's good information, and you can kind of lean into this and get more information out of it. I said we'd look at YouTube for tags, right? And I've got a website for that here. It is called the YTube tool. So with the YTube tool, I can look at videos that are basically competition videos to mine. I can look at other videos on YouTube, and I can see the tags that they're using on their videos and add those tags to my videos in the little tags box when you go to upload it. So for example, let me find one here that is definitely not my competition, but I'll pretend like they are. Let's find a Harvard CS50 video. Here's the URL for the Harvard CS50 video about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We can just paste the URL in here and click find the tags. I'm not a robot. And we can see the tags here that they use on that video. They use CS50. Obviously they would, because CS50 is a sort of a brand now, right? Like people are specifically looking for CS50 videos. Harvard, right? So when people are looking for things related to Harvard, it'll come up computer and science. It'll come up, and then the name of the speaker, David Milan. And so these are the tags that it's going to put on here, and they actually have this here to where you can actually just copy the tags here and just paste them into your video if you want to. Now, I wouldn't paste David Milan into mine, right? Or CS50 or Harvard. But this does give me a good idea of some other tags that seem to work for the CS50 videos. Something that might be more interesting is if we took and did this for, say, like a gaming channel. Let's find a Minecraft video here. We'll take a little Minecraft video from a Minecraft YouTuber and see what they put in as tags for gaming. Still not a robot. And you can see a lot of what comes up here are like things that people would be looking for: Minecraft 1.18, Minecraft Hardcore Survival, Minecraft Hardcore Survival Let's Play, Episode 1. This is not Episode 1 of this series for here, right? Like I have it on my other screen. It's Episode 18. But he's listing here in the tags Episode 1 to try to make this video more searchable. Minecraft Let's Play. Right, so you can take videos that would be your competition, pop them into this website, and get a list of tags that they use that you can copy and paste into your video to improve your video's searchability. Another thing we see with that is, in creating your titles, I've talked to some people who, manage some YouTube channels, and titles and thumbnails are a really interesting concept. Like I actually have known of people who will change a title or change a thumbnail for a video within the first hour or so of it being up to try to improve a video's performance if it's not performing particularly well. Try a different thumbnail, try a little different title to see what happens there. And you might have noticed that as you're using YouTube, right? Like you might watch certain channels first thing in the morning when it first gets posted. It might have one title and thumbnail, and then you go back an hour or two later and you see that it has a completely different title and thumbnail. And that's typically because it wasn't performing very well in that first hour or so that it was up. You'll also see a lot of influencers, a lot of people who are, these social media celebrities. They'll use their own name as a part of their video titles and tags to make them searchable, right? Because that way, like David Milan in the CS50 video there, people are looking for that individual in particular. And so if they look for that individual because they're in the zeitgeist, because people know who they are, then they want that to be a part of the title to make the video searchable for their own name. And a big thing here is to cross promote, right? Tweet out video links to your followers, embed your video in a blog post, and maybe put a little bit of other information in there. Feature your most engaging YouTube content on your website if you have it. And when it makes sense, especially if you are doing something sort of professional or business related, rebroadcast your YouTube videos on LinkedIn, right? Post them over there, or just kind of play them and stream them over there. And that's gonna give you more impact without any more work. And that pretty much gets us to our hour for today. Right? Even though we got started, again, sorry we got started a little later this morning. But I'm glad we could still meet and talk about some stuff. I hope you got some valuable information out of today. So this is where we'll stop for today. I'll hang out in the chat for just a couple more minutes with the music playing, just in case anybody who's with me here live has any questions. If you're watching the recording later on and you have any questions, please let me know. But that's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.